Hi everyone. So a few months ago, I had the pleasure of chatting with Oliver Sabo of Geissel Whips. He was going to donate some whips for the Whip 101 challenge that we're running on Facebook. So if you're not a part of that, you should go check it out. But when I saw Oliver's work, I was really blown away by the craftsmanship and the sort of the beautiful simplicity of the whips that he makes. And so I knew I wanted to get one. And Oliver was actually kind enough to send me one, and he just wanted a review that lets him know my thoughts on it. So this is what that video is going to be. Let's get started. So the most obvious thing to point out about Oliver's whips are these really beautiful handles. He uses really nice woods, stains them, and finishes them with this very clear, glossy shellac or varnish, and it just makes the handle look super nice. I love how the handle is the focal point of the whip. Sometimes you'll get a whip and you'll have really fancy braiding in the handle or maybe even in the thong, and that's awesome, but having this focal point on the handle really makes this a cool showpiece, and I'm really happy to have it in the collection. The handle as well I really like. I like how Oliver has used the same color all throughout the whip, but has still put some patterning in. I just think that looks really, really nice. And the hitching on the handle as well, I think is just super cool. It's super clean, and the way that he finishes it right here, it's nothing fancy, but it's super clean, and that really goes with the vibe of this whip. To me, this whip says, like, you can still be beautiful even if, things are simple. The braiding of the thong is all really good as well. It's really hard to find any drops. There might be one or two. Sorry, my camera's blurry. Might be one or two that are kind of easy to see, but for the most part, all of the drops and the braiding along this whip are really, really clean. There's just a little bit of dirt on it because I took it out cracking briefly before I shot this. So we ended in a 2-point hitch here. Now I think this hitch, these little tail ends could have been a bit shorter. I used to do mine this way as well, and then Danny Shaw told me he liked his shorter, and so I tried it. So now I cut mine to about this length, and I do think it's like way better, just because having these little tails here, I don't know, it kind of takes away and makes it look a little bit sloppier. And this whip really is about just elegance, simple elegance. The way he's tied on the crackers with this little hole through the end of the fall, I've seen that done before, and I like it, but I personally don't do it just because I blow my crackers a lot and it takes a long time to replace. But for now, it's really nice. And then the cracker itself is made out of just some string, or maybe paracord gut, I'm not sure. I normally don't like crackers that are made out of this material. It's really soft, and although it lasts like a pretty long time, I do find that it tangles pretty easily. And so normally I replace my crackers with polystring. And this is just like polypropylene string that's made of plastic, or polypropylene, I suppose. And those crackers look something like this. This is a blue one. And while these need to be replaced a little bit more often, they don't tangle as easily. And so for me, that's just a big plus. So I'll probably be replacing this cracker, but other than that, that's pretty nice. Another thing to mention is the knot here. So this is a Turk's head knot. I think it's a 6x7. And it's like a pretty good Turk's head knot. There is a little bit of crowding up at the top, and where the strands end is a little bit messy, but for the most part, the knot's super clean. I will say though that because of the way that this whip sort of looks, I think a better knot might have been a herringbone or pineapple knot, just because Turk's heads, naturally they can look kind of chunky or sloppy. Not because the braiding is sloppy, just because the knot itself sort of lends itself to like a ruggedness, I guess you would say. And the rest of this whip is super clean and super elegant. And so I think a slightly more intricate knot just in the one color would have been a really nice feature. That being said, it's still a really nice knot, and it's also a good size, especially for a hybrid whip, which I'm going to talk about a little bit later. I like having a slightly bigger handle just because I'm doing a lot of throws and stuff with the whip, so it makes it easier to catch. And yeah, that's all I have to say about the construction of the whip. So let's see how it cracks.
I took a couple test cracks on this before. That was more just to feel the weight of the whip itself. This is going to be my first actual cracking session with this whip. Let's see how it goes. So I really like the way that this whip cracks. The taper is pretty quick, so it makes the whip feel quite light. And when juxtaposed with the handle, that can make the cracking feel really, really easy because I'm moving this sort of heavier handle and the whip like just wants to crack. I will say, and Oliver and I talked about this a little bit, the balance of the whip to me feels just a tiny bit too handle heavy, but different types of wood have different weights, and I think that's sort of one of the challenges of making a whip that's like this, is you kind of have to accommodate very slightly for the weight in the thong to sort of have the right balance for the weight in the handle. I'm also battling the wind right now, and the sun's in my eyes, and so really the only thing that weight difference is doing is making the throws just a little bit harder. And also it makes moves, what I call slings, a little bit harder. So those are things like your neck wrap and your loop Rollins transfer. I'll do those now actually. So stuff like this, I find a little bit more challenging with this whip, just because the handle feels a little bit heavier and the thong feels lighter. And so tricks that rely on using the weight and the momentum of the thong in order to move the handle around can be a little bit tougher. That being said, it still feels really, really good, and I think if I spent some more time playing with it, it would be a lot easier. I also think that this sort of more handle-focused weight lends itself to throws that are a little bit harder, because it makes the whip sort of hang out in the same area, and that can make it easier to catch. So a good example of that is the cutback toss, where I throw the whip behind my back and catch it behind my back. I'm probably going to mess it up. You can see that the whip kind of flips in the same place, and that makes it really easy for that particular move. And I imagine it would be the same with any move like that, where you're just throwing the whip and it'll rotate kind of right around the transition, which is what you want. Bear in mind, easier to do throws when you're not looking directly into the sun. So just for the sake of this video, I brought out a couple other hybrids that I like to use in my practice. This first one is one that I made. It's a 4.5 footer, so it's slightly shorter than the one that Oliver made for me. And this one, while in my opinion a little bit more balanced, is also a lot lighter in the handle and in the thong. And so it's not really good for a lot of the stuff that I like to do. I just use it for warming up. So I do think that Oliver's, because there's more weight here, does make it easier than this one. But this hybrid, which is really old, I bought from Conrad Rustenberg back in 2013 or 2014, and this is my favorite hybrid. It is like fairly beaten up and dirty, but the reason I like it is because of the way that it's weighted. So the thong has slightly more weight, it's thicker. Like if you compare it to Oliver's, you should be able to see Conrad's is just like bigger. There's more just weight here, and then as well, while the handle isn't heavy throughout like Oliver's, and when I say heavy, I should say this isn't like, it's not like I'm holding a 15-pound dumbbell here. Like it's a good weight for a handle. I'm just talking in general. Conrad's is CPVC, so it's light here, and then more weight is here at the end, and then he even finishes with this little steel, I'm assuming it's a nail, I'm not sure what it is, but that gives more weight right at the end. And so when this one flips in the air, it just like, it flips perfectly. Just comes right back, right? And so that's sort of what I like in a hybrid. And I mentioned earlier that I like the size of Oliver's heel knot, and it's pretty much the same as Conrad's. And the reason I like these big heel knots is because A, puts more weight right at the end, which can help make the whip flip, and then B, it makes it easier to grab when I'm throwing it. A lot of people will treat hybrids as, well, just that, a hybrid, right? It's a mix between a stock whip and a bullwhip. It can't do everything a stock whip can do, and it can't do everything a bullwhip can do, but it can do most of the things in between. And while that's true, I think that it misses sort of one of the main things about a hybrid, which is it's great for throws, it's great for slings, and it's great for different contact moves. And in a way, to me, a hybrid isn't a mix of the two things. It's like its own thing, which has its own tricks, and those are personally my favorite tricks to do. So when Oliver asked what kind of whip I wanted, I chose hybrid just because I wanted to be able to do all that really fun stuff. So yeah, this is a fantastic whip. I'm really, really happy to have it. And I'll do one more video of me just cracking it and kind of goofing around with it. And then that'll be the end of the video. Thanks for watching.